I'll pick this one up. Now, this one is gruesome to say the least. So I'm going to warn you all. This is the one about David Fuller. And the reason that I wanted to cover the story of David Fuller being the man who is responsible for the deaths of Wendy Nell, Caroline Pierce 34 years ago, became known as the Bed-Sit murders because they were both murdered in their homes. And he presumably thought he'd got away with it. 34 years is an awful long time to carry out such crimes and not be found for it. But he was arrested last December after new advances in DNA techniques finally identified him. And it was when he was arrested that it was discovered that he had over 14 million images of utter depravity. 14 million. Think about, I can't even get my head around that, right? I certainly can't comprehend how sick and prolific he was. Now, these images included images of him sexually assaulting dozens of female corpses in the morgue of two hospitals that he worked at in Tunbridge Wells. He's an electrician, so he's a murderer and a necrophiliac. On Thursday, he pleaded guilty to the two murders. MPs have now called for a public inquiry into how a man was able to access hospital mortuaries and sexually abuse, they estimate, 100 bodies. Josh, what are your thoughts on this horror story?
Yeah, it's pretty disgusting, really. The 14 million images, that just I don't even know how you get that much hard drive space. I mean, I saw that they pulled like a chest of drawers out, and he had it hidden in behind the chest of drawers in like a little pocket for like loads of hard drives, which is like, whoa. Okay, well, you clearly knew you were doing something very wrong if that's how much you're hiding it.
That's right.
But the thing that really is even more stunning is the fact that, like, I think they said within a day of them announcing this, like 80 people had come forward to contact the police, which suggests that we don't quite know the extent of the crimes even at this point. Like, it's already like a horrific list of things. But it's the thing that always gets me with these cases is that, like, there's always like sort of very, shall we say, strange fetishes discussed when it comes to people like, say, Jimmy Savile, and I know you'd mentioned this to me.
Yeah.
And I did like a little bit of research on it. So yeah, in the 60s he was accused of the same thing in I think it was Leeds General Hospital. Right. And people are always like, oh, people don't do things like that, and then a story like this comes up and you're like, well, I mean, someone's doing it. That means, like, it's it reminds you that, like, but yeah, people can go to a very dark place.
Yeah, exactly. And the reason that I wanted to raise this up, and I said to you when I sent you the email, I said, I'm really sorry, it is gruesome. But the reason I want to is because, as you say, because it's so dark, because it's so depraved, people can't get their heads around it and imagine that this happens. But we need to be aware that this happens, because I saw an interview with the mother of one of the girls who had been violated by this man 3 times in the morgue. And that mother quite naturally is in bits. She'd lost her daughter, and then to find out that her daughter had been violated on top of that as well. And so they're talking about this inquiry. Obviously, they're going to make sure in future that there's CCTV in the morgues, and I'm not quite sure why they weren't there before. And they're going to be careful about who's able to have a swipe card to access it. And I think the other thing that's really scary about it is that there were press reports talking to exes of his who had no idea. They said he was perfectly normal. And when I've interviewed psychologists about this sort of level of depravity, they've told me that, yeah, what they do is they put their partner on a pedestal. Their partner isn't like those other women. Their partner isn't like the prostitutes. Their partner isn't like the women who they want to urinate over or anything. So they put their partner in a completely different place. So these partners said they had absolutely no clue. He was, fairly soft and gentle and all those things. And then we hear that he's and the thing is the other thing that I know is that whatever you see, there's usually like 5 times that in the background that you don't see. So we've heard he's killed 2 women. He's probably killed more. We've heard that he's violated 100 bodies. He's probably done more. I mean, 14 million images. That Imagine having to be the cops wading through that, Josh, discovering that. I mean, it is horrendous. What lessons do you feel we can learn from this?
Ooh, that's a good
Like,
question.
it's hard, isn't it? Because
Yeah,
you just don't know who's going to be like that, who's going to do things like that.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I guess it probably teaches us that you never know what's going on beneath the surface. There's definitely like an interesting look at how people can be two different types of people, like or two like entirely different people depending on who they're around.
Yeah.
Um, that which is yeah, a nice theme continued from our last conversations, which shows you that sociopaths that run our governments can be very different in public and in person, as Jennifer R. Curie was saying.
Yeah.
It's yeah, we need to I don't even know what you do about this aside from like trying to say, well, we need to try and make sure there's more help and mental health services for kids, especially because well, that's probably where everything goes wrong.
Well, and the other thing, and you're absolutely right, because we don't know his history. And but the other thing, of course, that we've realised, and certainly looking at this, is issues where at that level of depravity often um, go over into areas of child abuse as well. And he had child abuse images, and obviously, as you say, Jimmy Savile was rumoured to have been a necrophiliac as well. In fact, such a degree, Josh, I interviewed a woman who claimed to know about this in some detail and was able to supply us with such evidence that it ended up making the front page of the Sunday Express, that they said, yeah, we can go with this. We believe that there is sufficient evidence here that Jimmy Savile was a necrophiliac. Let me just go to the comments. No, Crone, you haven't missed anything. Well, I mean, but you can always look back on it later. Yes. And one of the things asked on here is, Scotch Miss says, so don't trust nice people. No, that's not it. I mean, because obviously that's problematic. But what I think we are becoming more savvy to what other people are like. We understand that when people are like so OTT nice, there might be something else going on in the background. And we understand that when people set themselves up as like, social justice warriors, or I'm here for the charity and everything, there might be something else going on in the background. Unfortunately, we've reached that stage, and the same with a lot of people who have gravitated towards working with children as well. And that's not to say that everybody working with children is a paedophile, but it is saying that we now know that a percentage is. So we just have to be careful. And I'd hate to tar everybody with the same brush, but you're absolutely right, Josh. One of the reasons that we know so little about this is because it's a taboo subject. Who talks about necrophilia? It isn't a mainstream media subject, is it? Which is why I felt we needed to, because I believe it crosses over into areas we cover. Josh does loads of interviews. He also interviews victims of child abuse. And I would urge you to look at Josh's website, The Gist. Some great interviews on there. So yeah, Josh, David Fuller, I mean, it just horrendous, really, isn't it? And obviously, the ripples of that and the repercussions. Do you think we should have an inquiry? Obviously, can't be conducted by the hospitals, though.
No, I mean, I guess you have to have an inquiry, because yeah, you don't know, he might have had accomplices or
Right.
so yeah, I think that the families and the victims are owed some sort of inquiry into it, just because yeah, I'm sure they want to know what happened, as disgusting as it probably is. They'll want to know what happened, and they'll want justice, I'm sure.